The Mississippi River, the mighty Mississippi, is at the top of this year's list of the most endangered rivers in America.
Well, the future of Minnesota's most famous river is in danger. That's according to a new report that ranked the Mississippi among the most endangered in the country.
The Mississippi River stretches over 2,300 miles from Minnesota to the Gulf of Mexico. It flows through the center of the United States, cutting across 10 states on its way south. It is one of the longest rivers in the world and ranks among the top 5 by length. More than 18 million Americans live in its basin, and many more depend on it every day. Each year, the river moves over 500 million tons of cargo. That trade supports 1.3 million jobs and generates more than $400 billion for the U.S. economy. It carries grain, oil, coal, and steel to factories and ports across the continent. But the Mississippi is not just a river. It is also a natural barrier that divides the country. In times of war or invasion, any force trying to reach the American interior would have to cross it. It shapes not just the landscape, but the strategy of the nation. Still, beneath its calm surface, something is changing. In recent decades, the river has begun to dry out more often and more severely. Long droughts have lowered water levels to record lows, and as the waters recede, they uncover something unexpected. Scientists are finding long, deep cracks in the riverbed. These aren't caused by erosion or human activity. They appear sudden, unnatural, and troubling. Could these be harmless shifts in the mud, or are they signs of something much more dangerous? In this video, we will talk about a growing pressure building deep beneath our feet. But before we start, here's a little question to entertain you. Which book character rafted down the Mississippi as a kid? A. Tom Sawyer. B. Scout Finch. C. Anne Shirley. D. Huckleberry Finn. Share your opinion in the comments and patiently watch this video till the end to find out the truth. The river in danger. Most Americans know the Mississippi River as a powerful and historic waterway. It stretches over 2,300 miles and supports a massive part of the nation's economy and ecology. But few realize that this iconic river also flows over one of the most geologically unstable regions in North America. Beneath the surface of the central Mississippi Valley lies the New Madrid seismic zone. This massive fault system is buried under deep layers of sediment and topsoil. Hidden from view, it remains one of the most quietly dangerous geological features in the United States. The New Madrid Fault is not as well known as California's San Andreas Fault, but it may be just as threatening. This fault zone has already proven its destructive potential. Between December 1811 and February 1812, a powerful sequence of earthquakes struck the region. The quakes are estimated to have reached magnitudes of 7.5 or even higher. They shook the ground so violently that the Mississippi River temporarily flowed in reverse. Chimneys toppled as far away as Cincinnati. Church bells rang hundreds of miles away in Boston. Entire forests were flattened. Swamps formed overnight. The very shape of the land was altered permanently. At the time, the Mississippi River Valley was only sparsely populated. But even with few people living nearby, the damage was historic. Today, that same region is home to millions. It includes major population centers and key parts of the nation's infrastructure. Cities like Memphis and St. Louis are directly in the danger zone. Critical bridges, power plants, gas pipelines, and transportation corridors all rely on land that could one day shift without warning. More than 200 years have passed since the last major earthquake in the region, but scientists now warn that the danger has not gone away. Instead, it may be growing. Recent studies have revealed new fractures forming deep beneath the Mississippi River. These are not erosion patterns caused by water flow. They appear to be tectonic in nature. Some of them are even actively shifting. The United States Geological Survey has reported changes in stress levels along the New Madrid Fault. River monitoring stations have detected subtle shifts in flow and the distribution of sediment. All of these signs point to a buildup of pressure deep beneath the surface. One of the key concerns is that this pressure may not be limited to the Mississippi River alone. The New Madrid Fault system stretches across several states and influences a wider network of geologic zones. That includes parts of the Ohio River Valley, the lower Wabash region, and even areas near the Tennessee River. Seismic events do not respect state lines. They move through connected layers of rock and sediment, often triggering effects far from the original fault. this brings up another historic event that adds to the concern. In 1895, a significant earthquake struck near Charleston, Missouri. Though smaller than the 1811-1812 sequence, it was still powerful and damaging. The Charleston quake reached an estimated magnitude of 6.6. It served as a reminder that the New Madrid zone remains active. The quake damaged buildings and disrupted the area at a time when awareness of seismic risk was still very limited. Today, the population is far larger, and many of the buildings and systems in the region are not designed to withstand strong shaking. There is another problem. Most people living in the Midwest do not think of earthquakes as a threat. Unlike in California, earthquake drills, retrofitting programs, and public awareness campaigns are rare. Yet the soil along the Mississippi and Ohio River valleys is particularly vulnerable. It amplifies seismic waves and can lead to a phenomenon called liquefaction. In this process, solid ground temporarily behaves like a liquid, causing buildings to collapse even if they are far from the fault line. In the worst-case scenario, a modern-day repeat of the 1812 earthquakes could rival or exceed the damage caused by more recent quakes in California, with major shipping hubs, bridges, highways, and fuel lines all crossing the Mississippi. The economic and human cost could be enormous. Recovery would take years. Some areas might never fully recover. Yet many emergency plans in the region are outdated, and critical systems are not reinforced. What makes this situation especially dangerous is the silence beneath the ground. There is no countdown clock. No one can say exactly when the next rupture will occur. All scientists can do is monitor, observe, and warn. And right now the signs are unsettling. The crust is under stress. Cracks are forming. The river is shifting in strange ways. Something is happening deep below, and we may be running out of time to prepare. Have you ever considered that a major earthquake could strike outside the West Coast? Let us know your thoughts. Before we dive deeper into this explosive story, please take a moment to hit that like button. It's a small action, but it helps YouTube's algorithm promote our videos to a wider audience. The hidden threat. The Mississippi River flows through the central United States, crossing 10 states and supporting a massive ecosystem and economy. It is one of the busiest commercial waterways in the world, moving over 500 million tons of goods each year. But in recent decades, the river has begun to change. Droughts have become more frequent and more severe. In 2022 and 2023, parts of the river reached their lowest levels in modern history. Barges were stuck in mud, exports slowed down, cities began to ration water, and scientists started paying closer attention to what the exposed riverbed might be revealing. Drought is often seen as a slow-moving crisis. It dries up fields, weakens crops, and lowers reservoirs. But in some parts of the United States, drought may be doing something far more dangerous. Along the Mississippi River, falling water levels are exposing a problem that goes deeper than dry soil. Beneath this iconic waterway lies one of the most geologically unstable zones in North America, and as the river recedes, it may be disturbing something long forgotten. The Mississippi River Valley sits directly on top of the New Madrid seismic zone. This hidden fault system is buried under layers of sediment and stretches across several states. It is not visible from the surface, but it has made its presence known before. In the winter of 1811 and 1812, a powerful series of earthquakes erupted from this zone. The shaking was so strong that the Mississippi River flowed backward for several hours. Entire forests were destroyed. Ground ruptures split open fields. And although the area was sparsely populated at the time, the damage was widespread and long-lasting. Today, that same region is home to millions of people and vital infrastructure. Major cities, bridges, pipelines, and power lines all depend on stable ground. But as drought pulls water away from the Mississippi, the ground beneath is changing. The river's weight once helped to apply steady pressure across the seismic zone. Now that pressure is lifting. When water leaves, the earth begins to rebound. This process is called isostatic adjustment. It happens when the surface of the earth, relieved of heavy weight, starts to rise and shift. In some cases, that shift can trigger earthquakes. Scientists have seen similar patterns in other parts of the world. In Iceland, rapid glacier melt has caused the land beneath to rise as the pressure from the ice disappears. This process has been linked to increased volcanic and seismic activity. After the last major glacial retreat, the number of volcanic eruptions in Iceland rose significantly. Researchers have observed that as the surface weight drops, the crust becomes more mobile, and faults begin to shift more easily. This is not theory. It is a documented response of the Earth to lost surface mass. The New Madrid seismic zone is unique in how it stores and releases stress. Unlike faults in California, which lie along tectonic boundaries, this zone sits in the middle of a plate. That means it does not move often. But when it does, the effects can spread across great distances. During the 1811 earthquakes, shaking was felt as far away as Boston. Today, the soft soils of the river valley could amplify any future quakes, causing more damage than hard rock areas might experience. At the same time, drought is also putting pressure on local ecosystems and economies. As water levels fall, fish populations decline, and wetlands shrink. Farmers lose access to irrigation. Shipping lanes narrow, forcing barges to carry lighter loads. Billions of dollars in trade are at risk, and all of this is happening on land that could be destabilized by hidden forces beneath the surface. The combined threat of drought and earthquake is not theoretical. The warning signs are appearing slowly but steadily. Changes in groundwater, soil behavior, and even small shifts in elevation are being recorded. These are not yet large enough to cause disaster, but they suggest that the land is not at rest. It is adjusting, it is responding, and it may be preparing for something larger. Most people living in the Mississippi Valley are not thinking about earthquakes. Their attention is on the heat, the dryness, and the cost of food and fuel. But if the river continues to dry out, the danger may move from economic to geological. The next major rupture of the New Madrid Fault might not come from deep underground alone. It could be helped along by the disappearance of water from above. This is not just a local issue. The Mississippi River is a national artery. It connects farms, factories, and ports across the central United States. If a major quake were to strike this region, the effects would ripple across the entire country. Supplies would stall. Energy networks could collapse. Recovery would take years. And yet, preparation remains limited. Many bridges, power lines, and water systems were built without seismic safety in mind. Climate change is making extreme weather more common. Droughts are lasting longer and reaching new depths. If these patterns continue, the Mississippi may dry out more often and more severely. Each time that happens, the risk grows. And each time, the earth beneath has a new chance to shift. Do you believe drought could trigger an earthquake in a place that rarely feels them? Let us know in the comments. Our team needs your help. Subscribe to our channel to help more people learn the truth about current events. And now we move on. The earthquake panic. Most people in the United States think of earthquakes as a West Coast problem. California gets the headlines. The San Andreas Fault is widely known, but deep beneath the central United States lies a different kind of threat. The New Madrid Seismic Zone, or NMSZ, is one of the most quietly dangerous fault systems in North America. Though it sits far from any plate boundary, its seismic history is among the most powerful ever recorded on the continent. The region experienced its most violent activity in the early 1800s, but many people are unaware that the fault remains active today. In fact, modern monitoring systems have recorded over 4,000 earthquakes in the NMSZ since 1974. Most of them are too small to be felt, but they paint a clear picture of constant underground movement. On average, at least one earthquake each year is strong enough to be felt across the region. The largest earthquake in the New Madrid zone during the 20th century occurred on November 9, 1968. It struck near Dale, Illinois, with a magnitude of 5.4. Though not catastrophic, the quake caused visible damage to buildings in Henderson, Kentucky. It was felt in 23 states. In Boston, people reported that their buildings swayed. At the time, it was the most powerful quake with an epicenter in Illinois on record. 40 years later, in 2008, another magnitude 5.4 quake occurred in the nearby Wabash Valley seismic zone. Its epicenter was located near West Salem and Mount Carmel, again in southeastern Illinois. Though neither of these events caused large-scale destruction, they were reminders that the fault is not dormant. The crust is still moving, pressure is still building, and history has shown that this zone is capable of much more than moderate tremors. That realization made the public especially vulnerable in 1990, when panic swept across the Midwest in response to one man's dramatic prediction. In 1989, a self-proclaimed climatologist named Eben Browning claimed he had successfully predicted two major events. He pointed to the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens and the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake in California. Based on this, he warned that a major earthquake would strike the New Madrid region between December 1st and December 5th of 1990. He estimated the chance at 50%, and predicted the magnitude would fall between 6.5 and 7.5. His theory relied heavily on tidal forces and the idea that the region was overdue for a quake. Despite the lack of peer-reviewed science to support his claims, the prediction was picked up by news outlets around the world. Local governments in the region received hundreds of concerned calls. Emergency drills were scheduled in multiple states. Some schools closed or postponed activities. Residents bought emergency supplies and prepared to evacuate. The media frenzy turned a speculative forecast into a national event. Behind the scenes, the United States Geological Survey stepped in. They asked a panel of qualified geologists and seismologists to evaluate the prediction. The panel concluded that the forecast lacked scientific validity. There is no established link between tidal patterns and major earthquakes. The idea that quakes in the New Madrid zone are overdue was also challenged. Earthquakes in intraplate zones like this one do not follow simple timelines. The forces that drive them are slower and less predictable than those along plate boundaries. The predicted window came and went without incident. No significant quake struck the New Madrid seismic zone in early December 1990, but the media storm had already demonstrated something important. In a region with little memory of a true disaster, fear spreads quickly when people are reminded that the ground beneath them is not as stable as it seems. The episode exposed how fragile public confidence can be when it collides with scientific uncertainty. More than 30 years later, the New Madrid seismic zone remains under close observation. Instruments continue to detect small quakes. The fault has not gone silent. Though most of the activity is minor, seismologists warn that pressure can build over centuries before releasing without warning. And because the region is not known for earthquakes, much of its infrastructure remains unprepared. Buildings, bridges, power lines, and pipelines in the central U.S. were not designed with seismic forces in mind. The soils along the Mississippi River Valley are particularly vulnerable to shaking. Even moderate quakes can cause liquefaction and ground failure in certain areas. And if a truly large quake were to occur, it would disrupt supply chains, damage utilities, and affect millions of people far beyond the immediate epicenter. The New Madrid zone may not be making daily headlines, but it has not gone dormant. It is quietly shifting beneath farms, towns, and highways. And while most people in the Midwest go about their lives without thinking about earthquakes, the potential for disaster has not disappeared. The risk is hidden, but it is real. Now we want to hear what you think. Do you remember the panic surrounding the 1990 prediction? Who's in the danger zone? In the central United States lies one of the country's most underestimated natural hazards. The New Madrid seismic zone, often called the NMSZ, is not well known to most Americans. Yet it has the potential to impact millions across several states. Unlike faults along the West Coast, this one hides under the flat plains and river valleys of the Midwest and South. But when it moves, the consequences can stretch far beyond its epicenter. The NMSZ is not confined to one location. Its reach extends beneath parts of 7 U.S. states. The most directly threatened are Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Illinois. Mississippi and Indiana are also within range of potential shaking, especially during stronger seismic events. The fault system runs near several major river valleys. These include not only the Mississippi River, but also the Wabash, Ohio, and Tennessee rivers. Stress within the crust does not respect state lines. It travels through the ground in all directions, affecting regions well beyond the fault's visible boundaries. When large earthquakes happen in this zone, they are felt over vast areas. During the 1811 and 1812 earthquake sequence, the ground shook from the Gulf of Mexico to the Great Lakes. Church bells reportedly rang in Boston. Chimneys fell in Cincinnati. Back then, the region was sparsely populated. Today, it is a different story. Cities like Memphis, St. Louis, Evansville, and Paducah sit atop or near vulnerable ground. These cities host millions of residents, major logistics hubs, and key pieces of national infrastructure. One of the most dangerous aspects of the New Madrid fault is how it interacts with the local soil. The ground in these regions is loose and water-saturated. When shaken, it can behave like a liquid. This phenomenon, called liquefaction, can cause buildings to collapse even far from the quake's source. Bridges, pipelines, and highways become vulnerable when the earth beneath them loses strength. This risk grows in areas built along rivers, where the soil is especially unstable. Despite this, many of the affected states remain underprepared. Building codes are outdated. Emergency drills are rare. Public awareness is low. Compare this to California, where earthquakes are part of daily life. There, sensors line fault zones. Real-time monitoring alerts residents seconds before shaking begins. Buildings are retrofitted. Bridges are reinforced. Schools conduct regular earthquake drills. The system is not perfect, but it exists and saves lives. In contrast, states in the New Madrid region lag behind. Some emergency systems are still based on 20th century assumptions. Critical infrastructure, like levees and dams, was designed with floods in mind, not seismic stress. In 2022, engineers found a structural crack in a Mississippi River bridge near Memphis. Though it was repaired, the incident raised questions about how well inspections are keeping up with aging infrastructure. If a major quake were to strike, the result could be widespread collapse and long-term disruption. The economic and strategic importance of this region makes the threat even more pressing. The Mississippi River is a major shipping artery. Ports in Memphis and St. Louis move millions of tons of cargo annually. Pipelines carrying oil and gas run across multiple fault lines. Power grids cross state borders, linking the South and Midwest. A major seismic event could ripple across the nation, halting trade, energy flows, and supply chains for weeks or months. Scientific data continues to confirm that the New Madrid seismic zone is active. Since the 1970s, over 4,000 earthquakes have been recorded. Most are small, but they indicate ongoing stress. On average, at least one quake each year is strong enough to be felt. The largest in recent decades was a 5.4 magnitude earthquake in 1968 near Dale, Illinois. It was felt in 23 states and damaged buildings as far away as Kentucky. In 2008, another 5.4 quake struck in the nearby Wabash Valley. These are not isolated events. They are part of a larger system that continues to move under the surface. Despite the risks, the public in many of these states remains unaware. Earthquakes are not top of mind in places like Arkansas or Kentucky. But the science is clear. The region is under threat. And unlike California, which has spent decades preparing, much of the central U.S. still views earthquakes as someone else's problem. The New Madrid fault line may not produce daily headlines, but it remains a real and growing danger. Seismic energy continues to build beneath the surface. When it is released, it will not stop at state borders. It will move through soil, water, and rock, impacting millions who never saw it coming. If you live in a risk zone, do you think local authorities are doing enough to prepare for a potential disaster? Do you think your community is truly prepared for such an event? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. The next big quake. The New Madrid seismic zone is one of the most overlooked but dangerous fault systems in the United States. It lies beneath parts of Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, Mississippi, and Indiana. Unlike faults in California, which are located at the boundaries of tectonic plates, the New Madrid fault is an intraplate system. That makes it more difficult to monitor and more unpredictable in its behavior. The region's geology makes the danger worse. The bedrock here allows seismic energy to travel much farther than in the western United States. A strong earthquake in the New Madrid zone could affect an area nearly 20 times larger than a similar event in California. In a worst-case scenario, a magnitude 7.6 quake could send shockwaves as far north as Indianapolis and as far south as Greenville, Mississippi. This risk is not theoretical. Between 1811 and 1812, a series of earthquakes in the New Madrid region shocked the entire continent. The Mississippi River flowed backwards, the land cracked and shifted. Tremors were felt as far away as Boston and Charleston. Those quakes were some of the most powerful in U.S. history, yet the region at the time was sparsely populated. Today, millions of people live above the same fault system, and the infrastructure is far more complex. Scientists are paying close attention to this area. Since the 1970s, more than 4,000 earthquakes have been recorded in the New Madrid region. Most were small, but the pattern is clear. Stress continues to build in the Earth's crust. On average, at least one earthquake each year is strong enough to be felt by residents, and with more sensors being installed, the rate of detection continues to rise. Critical infrastructure across the central United States is vulnerable. Over 3,500 bridges could be damaged in a major earthquake. Pipelines running through the region might suffer more than 400,000 breaks and leaks. These networks are vital for oil, gas, and clean water. If damaged, they could leave millions without access to basic utilities. Nearly 2.6 million homes could lose power within hours of a major event. Transportation routes, communications networks, and emergency services would be severely disrupted. The damage would not end there. Back in 2009, experts estimated that the economic fallout of a major New Madrid earthquake could reach at least $300 billion. That figure alone was staggering. But with over a decade of inflation, supply chain complexity, and rising infrastructure costs, the real number today could be far higher. The true impact could approach $500 billion when factoring in modern economic interdependence. Despite this looming threat, many states in the central U.S. are unprepared. Unlike California, where earthquake drills, early warning systems, and strict building codes are common, regions in the Midwest often lack these protections. In some areas, seismic standards are outdated or completely ignored. Emergency response plans are limited, and public awareness is dangerously low. All of these points to a critical question. Are we ready for the next major earthquake in the central United States? The science is clear, the threat is real, and time may be running out. Now it's time to find out the correct answer to the quiz. Which book character rafted down the Mississippi as a kid? A. Tom Sawyer. B. Scout Finch. C. Anne Shirley. D. Huckleberry Finn. The correct answer is D. Huckleberry Finn. Monitoring the earthquake zone, scientists are paying close attention to the seismic activity beneath the Mississippi River. Research teams from USGS and major universities have set up advanced instruments across the region. These include GPS sensors, seismometers, and borehole detectors to track small underground shifts. The data shows a slow, steady movement of the ground known as creep. Although barely noticeable, this motion may signal that pressure is quietly building along hidden faults. To support these efforts, satellites like INSAR are tracking surface changes that cannot be seen with the human eye. Other tools now in use include chemical sensors that detect gas emissions. Gases such as radon and helium often point to movement deep within the Earth. Combined, these technologies give scientists a more detailed picture of what lies below. Even though earthquake prediction is not an exact science, more data improves early warning efforts. Some experts have reported strange behavior near certain parts of the river. In a few locations, water has been seen vanishing into deep ground fissures. It appears the Mississippi may be slowly draining into the subsurface. This raises new questions about how land movement and river flow are connected. For generations, the Mississippi River has been more than just a geographic feature. It's a symbol of freedom and discovery. Famously featured in The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, the American literary character most associated with the river. Mark Twain's stories brought this region to life, long before scientists began to uncover its hidden dangers. If a major earthquake strikes this region, the results could be disastrous. Bridges might collapse, roads could fail, and power lines may be cut. Entire communities could lose electricity and clean water. The Mississippi is a vital shipping route and an economic artery for the entire country. If damaged, recovery could take months or even longer. Calls for more government funding are growing louder across scientific circles. Many believe this region lacks the resources needed for proper monitoring. If the fault activates, the first alert may come not from sirens, but from the trembling earth itself. The cracks under the river may seem minor now, but their meaning could be far more serious. To understand what might be done, it's useful to look at what happened in California. In August 2024, a magnitude 5.2 earthquake struck near Bakersfield. Thanks to California's earthquake early warning system, more than 5 million people received alerts seconds before the shaking began. These notifications came through the MyShake app and mobile phone alerts, giving people just enough time to take protective action. The system is powered by a network of seismic sensors connected to USGS and the California Office of Emergency Services. When tremors are detected, the system rapidly estimates the quake's size and location, then pushes alerts to affected areas. This was one of the most effective uses of the system since it became public in 2019. It reduced injuries, allowed trains to slow down, and helped emergency services prepare for follow-up responses. California's example shows that early action matters. The same kind of infrastructure is largely missing in the New Madrid region. Here, earthquakes can affect a much larger area due to the composition of the bedrock, but public awareness, emergency drills, and detection tools remain limited. Experts say we are running out of time to prepare. The Mississippi River region is overdue for a large quake, and the silent stress building beneath the surface will not stay quiet forever. What we do now may determine how many lives and homes are saved later. Do you think America is prepared for an earthquake in the central United States? Should more resources be invested in warning systems for the New Madrid region? Share your thoughts in the comments. Cracks in the riverbed. The Mississippi River flows through the very center of the United States and supports everything from agriculture to shipping and power infrastructure. It crosses 10 states and connects dozens of major cities. Beneath this river lies one of the most unstable geological regions in North America. It is called the New Madrid Seismic Zone, and it stretches through Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Illinois. Most Americans have never heard of it, but in 1811 and 1812, this zone produced a series of earthquakes that caused the Mississippi to flow in reverse. Forests were flattened, towns destroyed, and the shaking was felt more than 1,000 miles away. For many years, those events were treated as rare anomalies. They were written off as strange historical footnotes. But now, recent findings in the riverbed suggest that the threat may never have gone away. In fact, it may be building once again. During a depth survey between Missouri and Tennessee, researchers discovered a series of unusual features beneath the river. What they found were vertical cracks dropping deep into the earth. These were not gradual channels formed by erosion. They were long, straight, and unnaturally sharp. The sonar images looked less like riverbed sediment and more like something had split open from below. As the scans expanded, the number of cracks began to grow. They were appearing in multiple locations, all along a specific stretch of the river. In one particularly concerning area, the bottom of the river had dropped by almost a meter in less than a week. Barges that normally moved freely became grounded. The depth of the channel had changed so quickly that crews were caught off guard. Water behavior also shifted. Spiraling motion appeared near some of the fractures. In certain places, water seemed to drain straight into the openings. It was not just the ground that had changed. The river's behavior was also being altered. Geologists began plotting the fractures and noticed a pattern. The cracks were not random. They were aligned following a path that pointed southeast, directly toward the core of the New Madrid fault system. That alignment set off new alarms. If tectonic stress is building under the Mississippi, these cracks could be one of the earliest visible warnings. Unlike surface earthquakes, deep pressure changes can unfold silently for months before erupting. The Mississippi has long shaped the land around it, but now the land beneath it may be preparing to reshape everything above. Do you think these cracks are a warning sign of something bigger? Tell us what you think in the comments. Our team needs your help. Subscribe to our channel to help more people learn the truth about current events. And now we move on. The horror of 1811. The winter of 1811 brought something to the central United States that few people could explain. In late December, the ground beneath the Mississippi River began to tremble. What started as a distant vibration soon became deep and violent shaking. The first of several powerful earthquakes struck near what is now northeastern Arkansas. Over the next 3 months, more quakes followed. The sequence became one of the most powerful and mysterious natural disasters in American history. Some of the tremors were strong enough to ring church bells over 1,000 miles away. The shaking caused landslides, cracked homes, and twisted the very shape of the river. In the town of New Madrid, Missouri, people fled their homes and camped outdoors, afraid to stay inside buildings that were no longer stable. Many reported that the ground buckled underfoot and split open. Entire groves of trees were swallowed, and livestock vanished into the earth. The most terrifying part was not just the strength of the earthquakes, it was the fact that they happened in a place thought to be geologically quiet. This was not California or Alaska. There were no warning signs, there were no active volcanoes, and there were no visible fault lines on any official maps. The central United States had never experienced anything like it before. For months, the region shook without explanation. Reports from the time described the Mississippi River behaving in ways no one had ever seen. In some locations, the river seemed to lift and fall in waves. Muddy water shot into the air from cracks in the ground. In one of the largest shocks, the river reversed course and flowed backward for several hours. The laws of nature appeared to break in real time. The river that had shaped the continent for millions of years was being shaken apart by forces deep underground. Modern scientists now estimate that the New Madrid earthquakes reached a magnitude between 7.5 and 8.0. If such quakes occurred today, the consequences would be far greater. Back then, the region was lightly populated. Today, millions of people live and work along the same seismic corridor. Cities like Memphis and St. Louis sit directly in the risk zone. Critical rail lines, gas pipelines, and highway networks cross through this area. Many of these structures are not designed to survive major ground movement. Although the 1811 event seems distant, it may not be over. Small earthquakes continue to rattle the region every year. Researchers believe the fault system is still active and may simply be recharging. What happened once in a rural wilderness could easily repeat in today's modern and crowded heartland. Do you think the forgotten earthquakes of 1811 are trying to tell us something? Let us know what you think in the comments. Now please take a moment to hit that like button. It's a small action, but it helps YouTube's algorithm promote our videos to a wider audience. River levels falling. In recent years, the Mississippi River has been behaving in ways that are difficult to explain. Water levels in several regions have dropped to historic lows. Commercial barges have become stranded in places where traffic once flowed without issue. Entire stretches of the river have narrowed, forcing cargo to move in smaller loads or wait for water to rise. What was once a deep and steady current has become unpredictable and fragile in key areas. At first, these changes were blamed on drought. Climate experts pointed to long periods of low rainfall and extreme heat. They explained the falling water levels as part of a broader environmental shift. That view made sense at first, but over time, it became harder to accept as the full picture. In some years, rainfall levels were normal or even higher than average, yet the river kept dropping. In a few cases, water disappeared from large segments of the river almost overnight. Hydrologists began reviewing satellite data to understand what was happening. What they found raised new questions. In certain parts of the river, the rate of water loss was greater than expected. These areas showed no large dams, diversions, or irrigation withdrawals. The ground was not unusually dry, and yet the water was vanishing. It was as if the river was bleeding out from somewhere beneath. Some researchers began to suspect a deeper cause. In regions where vertical fractures had already been discovered beneath the river, water flow patterns were different. The current moved with less force. Strange swirling patterns appeared on the surface. Instruments recorded sudden pressure drops in the riverbed. In a few spots, survey crews watched water form whirlpools and vanish into cracks that were barely visible from above. These events were isolated, but not random. They often occurred near known fault lines or areas of recent ground movement. This raised a difficult possibility. What if the Mississippi was losing water not because of surface conditions, but because of something opening underground? If cracks in the riverbed are growing, they may be creating new channels that allow water to drain into deeper layers of the earth. In that case, the river is not just shrinking, it is collapsing from within. If this process continues, the damage could go far beyond stranded barges. The Mississippi supplies water to millions of people. It supports agriculture, energy production, and transportation. A breakdown in the river's structure could disrupt every one of those systems. If sections of the riverbed begin to cave in, the results would be immediate and widespread. The central waterway of the United States would become a national emergency. Do you think the Mississippi is being affected by surface conditions, or could something deeper be responsible for the water loss? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Share this video on X to help us grow. Every share counts. Underground echo. As researchers continued to investigate changes in the Mississippi River, they began to notice something even more unusual than the cracks or falling water levels. Deep under the riverbed, instruments were picking up a strange sound. It was low, constant, and rhythmic. At first, scientists believed it was just background noise, but the pattern did not match any known natural source. This hum was not caused by machinery, river traffic, or underground water movement. It came from much deeper below the surface. Seismic sensors and acoustic equipment began to register the same signal in multiple locations. The frequency and rhythm were consistent. It pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. Some teams even recorded minor ground vibrations that coincided with the sound. The discovery led to a series of new surveys. Seismic instruments were deployed along the river at strategic points. In some areas, they picked up repeated pulses every few hours. The pattern was not random. It followed a schedule. That was one of the most disturbing parts. Natural processes do not usually operate on a timer, but this signal was different. It suggested coordination or repetition beyond natural tectonic activity. Geologists debated the possible causes. Some suggested that the sound could be linked to pressure changes in the deep fault system. Others argued it might be caused by shifts in underground rock layers, but no one could explain the regular timing. and none of the models accounted for the steady pulse that was now being picked up in multiple states. As the investigation widened, data from earlier years was reanalyzed. It turned out that weaker versions of this signal had been present before, but dismissed as interference. Now those same traces appeared to line up with regions where cracks and riverbed drops had been found. In other words, the sound had been there for years. It had just gone unnoticed. Some researchers began to worry that this signal could be a sign of growing instability. If the ground is vibrating at regular intervals, it may mean that pressure is building and releasing in cycles. That kind of pattern can be dangerous. In tectonic systems, repetitive stress signals often come before a rupture, and in a place like the New Madrid seismic zone, that could be catastrophic. Others pointed to the unnatural rhythm of the sound. They questioned whether the signal could be linked to something non-tectonic, something artificial. That idea remains unofficial, but even without it, the presence of a deep repeating vibration is reason for concern. What do you think is causing the pulse beneath the Mississippi River? Could it be a natural warning sign? Or is there something else waiting deep below? Tell us what you believe in the comments. Infrastructure on the edge. The Mississippi River is not just a waterway. It is a critical part of the physical systems that keep the country running. Barges carry grain, oil, and chemicals along its length. Pipelines follow its course, moving fuel between states. Ports, dams, and water treatment plants operate beside its banks. Major bridges connect regions across its surface, and in many places the river cools power plants or supplies fresh water to cities. The entire central United States depends on this river being deep, steady, and geologically stable, but that stability may now be in question. As fractures open in the riverbed and the ground shifts below, the infrastructure built along and across the Mississippi faces new risks. If the bed beneath a pipeline or bridge begins to move, the structure above will follow. Engineers are especially concerned about the foundations of bridges and piers. These supports were designed for static conditions, not for active seismic pressure or riverbed collapse. In 2021, a major warning came to light. A critical crack was discovered in a key support beam on the Hernando de Soto Bridge between Arkansas and Tennessee. That fracture had gone unnoticed for years while tens of thousands of vehicles crossed daily. The bridge was closed immediately for repairs, disrupting traffic and freight for weeks. Officials called it a close call, but others asked how many similar cracks might still be hidden in other aging crossings. Beyond bridges, the risks extend to pipelines that run underneath or parallel to the river. A shift in sediment or a drop in riverbed elevation could cause those lines to rupture. If the movement is slow, damage may occur over time. If it is sudden, the result could be catastrophic. Spills, gas leaks, and water contamination are all possible outcomes if pipe integrity is compromised. The Mississippi is also lined with infrastructure that depends on stable water levels. Water treatment facilities, power plants, and industrial cooling systems are calibrated to expect steady flow. If river levels continue to fall, or if the current becomes unpredictable due to cracks, these systems could lose function. A sudden interruption in any one of them could affect thousands or even millions of people downstream. Flood control systems are also in question. Levees and spillways are designed to handle known water volumes and established flow paths, but if the riverbed is destabilized, those models may no longer apply. The result could be unexpected surges, overtopped defenses, or uncontrolled releases from aging dam structures. None of these risks exist in isolation. Together they form a chain of dependency that relies on the ground staying still. But with each new crack discovered beneath the Mississippi, that assumption becomes harder to trust. Do you think America's infrastructure is ready for a shift in the river it depends on? Or are we underestimating how fragile this system has become? Share your thoughts in the comments. Grid of fractures. As scientists collected more data from the Mississippi riverbed, a new and unexpected pattern began to emerge. The cracks were not forming at random. They followed direction and spacing that looked increasingly deliberate. When mapped, the fractures revealed a broad but consistent grid-like arrangement across the region. This was not just a scatter of surface faults, it was a system. Most natural cracks form based on chaotic forces. Stress from flowing water, shifting sediments, and irregular pressure points tend to create random paths. But in this case, the fractures beneath the river were forming along long, straight lines. Many ran southeast, while others crossed them almost at right angles. It was not a perfect pattern, but it was organized enough to raise questions. Some geologists called it a geometric coincidence. Others were not so sure. The location of these lines made the situation even more unsettling. Many of the fractures align with known energy release zones from the New Madrid earthquakes of 1811 and 1812. In multiple places, the grid overlaps with points where seismic waves were strongest in the past. That overlap suggests that the fault system beneath the Mississippi may not just be reawakening. It may be following the same ancient rupture paths that once split the land 2 centuries ago. As the analysis widened, researchers noticed more connections. Some of the crack paths line up with previously unmapped subsurface structures. These include deep basement rock formations and buried boundaries between geological plates. In several areas, ground-penetrating radar picked up echoes consistent with old fault scars that have not moved in recorded history, until now. Another disturbing detail is the connection to the pulse-like vibrations detected in earlier surveys. These signals seem to travel along the same axis as the fractures. That suggests the pressure below is not static. It is moving, following invisible corridors through the subsurface. What scientists once assumed were isolated cracks may be connected by deeper active pathways that span multiple states. The Mississippi River itself appears to trace the spine of this grid. As cracks open and riverbed sections shift, the river may be responding to forces far below. It could also mean that the water is revealing the surface expression of something deeper. If the fractures continue spreading along these lines, they could eventually link into a larger rupture zone capable of producing widespread seismic events. Experts remain cautious in their conclusions. No one wants to raise public alarm before more data is confirmed, but the evidence is growing. This is no longer a scattered set of surface anomalies. It is a coordinated pattern, and it may be the beginning of something far more serious. Do you think this growing grid of fractures is a natural coincidence? Or is it a sign of an ancient system reawakening beneath the surface? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Sudden drain event. Not all changes in the Mississippi River happen slowly. In May of last year, a section of the river near southern Missouri experienced what researchers now refer to as a sudden drain event. Within hours, the riverbed in that area dropped by nearly a foot. Thousands of gallons of water disappeared without warning. There was no rain, no upstream diversion, and no dam activity. It was as if the river simply fell into the ground. Local crews reported strange behavior in the hours before the drop. The current slowed down and surface flow became uneven. Pockets of water formed stationary eddies in places where none had existed before. Then came the sound. Several eyewitnesses described hearing a low, distant hum that grew stronger just before the water vanished. The sound lasted only a few minutes, but it was enough to trigger alarm. When survey teams arrived, they found new cracks and depressions in the riverbed. The sonar scans confirmed what many feared. The water had drained into a newly formed cavity below the surface. Sediment had collapsed inward, and layers of material had shifted beneath the riverbed. Engineers were surprised at how clean the fracture edges looked. They did not appear worn down or eroded. The break looked recent and sharp. The event raised immediate concerns about the structural integrity of the riverbed. If one section could fail without warning, others might be at risk too. Emergency teams began reviewing other vulnerable points along the river. In several cases, they found minor collapses or weakening sediment not yet visible from the surface. These silent failures could represent the early stages of larger disruptions. Officials did not release much information to the public. Most reports were labeled as temporary navigation hazards, but internal documents show that several agencies took the drain event seriously. New guidelines were drafted for barge routes, and extra surveys were ordered for other high-traffic zones. What makes this situation more alarming is that it is not isolated. Smaller drain events have now been recorded in at least 3 other locations. Each time the pattern is similar: sudden water loss, followed by localized collapse, followed by silence. These events are not part of normal river behavior. They point to a larger issue forming below. Geologists are still working to determine what is causing these collapses. Some believe it is a result of pressure release within the fault system. Others think it may be due to the formation of new underground voids as the rock layers shift. Either way, the Mississippi River is showing signs that its foundation is no longer as stable as it once was. Do you think these sudden collapses are isolated events, or are they warnings of something much larger building beneath the Mississippi? Tell us what you think in the comments. Pressure builds beneath. For months, sensors across the Mississippi River Valley have been picking up strange signals. These are not your typical seismic tremors. Instead, they are low-frequency pulses that ripple through the ground with a rhythm that is both steady and unnatural. The signals are not strong enough to shake buildings, but they are consistent enough to raise concern. Some of the pulses appear to travel in patterns. They do not radiate from a single epicenter like a normal quake. Instead, they migrate slowly from south to north or in reverse. Researchers have compared the data and found that some of these patterns match the alignment of known cracks and fractures under the river. This connection has led to a theory that pressure may be building not in one place, but across a broader region. Infrasound detectors have also picked up anomalies. These are ultra-low vibrations that humans cannot hear, but that travel for miles through solid rock. Several stations detected the same signals days apart, sometimes across hundreds of miles. That is not common. It means the energy is moving along pathways, possibly following the deep structure of the new Madrid seismic zone. Some geologists now think that the pressure is not static. It is shifting underground, possibly bouncing between old fault lines. In this theory, the Mississippi is not the cause of the problem, but the indicator. As the fault system awakens, it pushes and pulls on the riverbed, releasing silent waves of energy, and the river, with its soft sediments and deep basin, reacts in ways other landscapes would not. Adding to the concern is the rise in microquakes. These tiny tremors usually go unnoticed, but new equipment has logged dozens more than usual across the past year. Some occur in clusters, others hit alone but always in or near the Mississippi Valley. In isolation, they would be ignored. In context, they are a chorus of tension. The buildup of underground pressure does not guarantee a major quake, but it increases the chances. Think of it as water behind a dam. The wall can hold for a long time, until it doesn't, and when the break comes, it does not happen gradually. Officials monitoring the area are walking a fine line. They do not want to cause panic, but they cannot dismiss the data. Emergency protocols are being reviewed. Some freight routes are under evaluation, and quietly, agencies are testing communications systems for rapid alerts. There is no precise timeline for what may come, but something is changing deep beneath the ground, and it is happening in more than one place at once. Do you think the pulses and pressure shifts mean the fault is coming alive again? Or could something else be forcing the Mississippi to react? Share your theories in the comments. If it strikes again. Everything we have shown so far, from unusual vibrations to sudden cracks and shifting ground, might not be isolated events. Together, they reveal a deeper pattern building beneath the surface, and many experts believe it is pointing toward a single terrifying possibility: a large-scale rupture in the new Madrid seismic zone. When Mount St. Helens began showing signs of activity in 1980, the early signals were easy to miss. Yellowstone sends warnings with ground swelling and delayed geysers. But in the center of the United States, the danger is different. There are no volcanoes. Here the threat comes from hidden faults and unstable riverbeds. In the 1970s, after installing seismic stations in the region, geologists confirmed that small earthquakes regularly shake the area. A 5.4 magnitude event near Dale, Illinois in 1968 damaged buildings across multiple states and shook Boston. Such quakes reminded experts that this fault zone remains active and unpredictable. The last major rupture occurred in 1811 and 1812, when the Mississippi River actually ran backward for hours. Entire forests collapsed. Bells rang hundreds of miles away. Now this region is much more populated and connected. A similar event today would unfold on a scale beyond imagination. Memphis is built near the fault's southern edge on soft soil prone to liquefaction. St. Louis lies farther north, but remains at great risk. Major bridges over the Mississippi could collapse. Gas, power, and communication lines would likely snap. The eastern and western U.S. could be cut off overnight. The danger reaches farther still. Scientists warn that a major quake could ripple through the lower Wabash, Ohio, and Tennessee River valleys. These zones are lined with dams, levees, and water plants not designed for strong earthquakes. Water systems could fail. Towns could be flooded and isolated in days. Federal simulations estimate that over 7 million people would be affected directly. More than 80,000 could be injured or trapped. Economic losses may exceed $300 billion. Airports could shut down. Roads would crack. Entire cities might lose power and essential services for weeks, even months. Beyond infrastructure, the Mississippi is also a food lifeline. Barges ship grain, fertilizer, and fuel. If the river shuts down, farmers could be cut off from supplies. Crops may spoil. Food prices could spike nationwide and even globally. And now the warning signs are growing louder. Microquakes are rising. New cracks appear. Pulses under the river continue. Just like before Mount St. Helens erupted, the land seems to be under pressure. The Mississippi River may lie directly above a fault that is slowly reawakening. Do you believe the United States is truly prepared for a disaster in the new Madrid zone? And what do you think would happen if the Mississippi River itself split wide open again? Share your thoughts in the comments. Final warning. The Mississippi River is not just a body of water. It is a fault line, a food supply, and a symbol of national strength. But today, it is also a warning sign. Water levels continue to fall in strange places. Cracks appear in the riverbed without explanation. Bridges require emergency repairs. Barge traffic halts when the depth drops too low. All of this is happening along the New Madrid seismic zone, a region with a violent past and an uncertain future. Officially, scientists are watching the area closely. Agencies have placed sensors, mapped historical fault lines, and issued quiet reports. But online, people are raising alarms of a different kind. In scattered comments, individuals speak of waking up with dread. One woman said she felt spiritually pulled toward the river and saw visions of ruined bridges and debris cutting off the country. Another claimed to have participated in a 2012 military drill involving 6 nations, preparing for a massive quake in this very region. Some fear crossing the Mississippi altogether, convinced they might not return. And for many, the fear runs deeper than geology. They turn to the Bible and see clear parallels. In the Gospel of Matthew, it is written that nation shall rise against nation, that there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in many places. It is said that all of these marks only the beginning of sorrows. To believers, these words were not poetic warnings from a distant past. They were precise predictions. And those predictions are now aligning with what we see around us. Droughts are hitting food-producing states. Floods strike others. Pest outbreaks destroy crops. Wildfires rage through once stable regions. Meanwhile, the ground beneath the river trembles in silence. What was once unthinkable has become increasingly possible. And those with faith see the Mississippi not just as a river, but as a dividing line between eras. When the last massive rupture struck this zone in 1811, it caused the Mississippi River to reverse flow. Towns vanished. Forests sank. Now millions live where only thousands once stood. And while cities grow, the risks multiply. Modern infrastructure is stretched thin. Roads, pipelines, and power lines cross unstable ground. If another rupture begins, the results will be swift and devastating. We have seen the signs. Cracks underwater, bridges under strain, sinkholes along the banks, seismic pulses with no clear source. Each alone might be ignored. Together, they paint a picture too dangerous to dismiss. The ground is shifting. Pressure is building. Something beneath the Mississippi may be preparing to move. The question now is not whether the land is warning us. The question is whether anyone is listening. Do you think these signs point to a natural disaster, a spiritual reckoning, or both? Let us know what you believe in the comments. Thank you for exploring the hidden corners of the USA with us. Click on the video you see on the screen to check out other hidden discoveries on our channel.